Billionaire CEO shocked. He rushed to save his ex-wife and found out about the twins. Before we dive in, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Type your city in the comments so we can see just how far this story reaches. And when we get to the end, I dare you to rate it from 0 to 10 because this one might just break your heart. Now, enjoy the story. That night, as the fiercest storm the city had ever seen raged outside the glass doors of Mercy General Hospital burst open, a man in a $1,000 suit drenched to the bone crashed through them as if the world itself were collapsing at his feet. Celeste Winters, where is my wife? The voice of Donovan Sterling, CEO titan of industry, a man who once held empires in his hands, echoed down the sterile corridor, freezing every nurse and doctor in their tracks. In that moment, power, wealth, and reputation meant nothing, because in his eyes, there was only one truth left. The woman who had walked away from him was now lying on the edge of life and death, carrying twins he never even knew existed. The midnight call. On the 52nd floor of Sterling Tower, the lights burned long past midnight, a cold glow spilling over a city drowning in relentless rain. Inside an office that looked more like an art museum than a workplace with glass walls wrapping around the skyline, Donovan Sterling, 33 years old, billionaire CEO of Sterling Industries, sat in silence at his desk. Before him lay not financial reports nor international contracts, but a divorce paper. And halfway down that paper was the unfinished signature of the only woman who had ever made his heart tremble, Celeste Winters. The delicate curve of her name cut sharper than any blade, carving into the pride of a man who had always been used to bending the world to his will. And then destiny knocked. The phone lit up, its screen flashing with an unfamiliar number. Almost without thought, he answered. On the other end, a woman's voice, shaken, urgent, trembling through the storm of the night. Mr. Sterling, Celeste Winters has just been admitted to the hospital in critical condition, and she is carrying twins. In that instant, the billion-dollar empire meant nothing. Time itself seemed to stop. The only sound pounding inside his mind wasn't the tick of stocks or the hum of profit, it was his heart screaming her name, Celeste, and the children. So I ask you, if you were Donovan, what would you do when a midnight call revealed a truth powerful enough to change your life forever? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this story just might reach into your own heart. Chapter 1. The Reign of Fate. That night, the city felt like a tragedy already written, waiting only for its main character to step into the scene. Rain hammered against the cold glass walls of Sterling Tower, blurring the weary golden lights of offices still awake at midnight. At the very top floor, Donovan Sterling clutched the phone he had just pulled from his ear. His breath came fast and shallow, as though a single pause might cost him everything. Twins. Celeste. The words thundered through his mind like lightning, tearing across the blackened sky. Without another thought, he bolted from his office. Security guards looked up in shock as the CEO, known for his composure, his power, his unshakable presence, came running through the lobby. His tie hung crooked. His shirt clung damp with sweat and rain. When the elevator doors opened, he slammed his palm against the button for the ground floor again and again, a man stripped of patience, stripped of control. Down below, Marcus, his loyal driver, was already waiting. The sleek black limousine looked suddenly fragile against the floodwaters rising in the streets. Donovan yanked the door open, his voice breaking with urgency. "Mercy General! Now! As fast as you can!" Marcus glanced through the windshield, where rain battered the glass like 1,000 stones. "Sir, the highway's flooded. Accidents everywhere. We might need to know." Donovan's voice cracked into a roar, his fist striking the leather armrest. "That's my wife and my children. Do you understand, Marcus? Save them or I will never forgive myself." Marcus only nodded, foot pressing hard to the floor. The engine roared alive, the car leaping forward like a caged beast set free. Water sprayed high as the limousine tore through the storm. Inside, Donovan sat rigid, his hands trembling for the first time in his life. The windshield reflected the face of a man once untouchable, once proud, now twisted with fear. He could still hear the doctor's voice, "Celeste Winters, critical condition. And she's carrying twins." Each word had been a knife cutting through every contract, every dollar sign, every empire he had built, until nothing remained but a raw, desperate heart. The road to the hospital had turned into a river of shadows. Headlights smeared across the wet asphalt, bending into ghostly streaks as oil mixed with rain, shimmering like broken rainbows under a sky that refused to let up. Donovan gripped the armrest until his knuckles whitened, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. He wasn't a CEO commanding billions anymore. He was a man terrified of losing what mattered most. Faster, Marcus. Sir, if we push harder, the car could just do it. Marcus grit his teeth, the tires shrieking as they tore through the flood, sending water cascading like shattered glass. Donovan turned to the window, rain streaking down like tears. And through that blur, his mind conjured Celeste, her golden hair heavy with water, her blue eyes once bright with faith in him, now fading in memory. A memory rose unbidden the first time they had truly fought. Celeste in a simple dress, standing in the penthouse's golden glow, eyes brimming with tears. Do you ever really see me, Donovan? Or do you only see the company, the deals, the numbers? And he had stayed silent, until silence cost him everything. A red light flared ahead, forcing the car to stop. Donovan let out a growl, pacing in his own skin like a caged animal. Why now? Why stop now? The clock ticked each second, carving deeper into him. He struck the glass with his fist, the sound vanishing into the downpour. His voice trembled, torn from his chest. Don't let me be too late. Don't take this last chance from me. The light turned green and the car lunged forward. In the distance, sirens wailed, slicing through the storm like knives of fate. Donovan closed his eyes for a single breath, his chest seizing with pain. He could see her, Celeste, pale and fragile beneath sterile hospital lights, machines crowding around her, her breath shallow. And beyond her, two fragile souls, Aurora, Sebastian. Names he whispered in the darkness, as if naming them could keep them alive. His eyes blurred, though, whether from rain or tears he no longer knew. Perhaps for the first time in his life, Donovan Sterling allowed himself to weep. So I ask you, do you believe a single midnight call can change the course of an entire life? Tell me in the comments, because this may be the very moment where Donovan's fate is rewritten forever. The limousine skidded through the final intersection and braked hard in front of Mercy General Hospital. Rain poured in sheets, thunder splitting the sky like a hammer on stone, but Donovan felt nothing except the pounding of his own heart. He threw the door open before the car had even stopped, his polished shoes sinking into the flooded pavement, his $1,000 suit plastered to his skin. The man who once graced the cover of Forbes with a cold, flawless smile now stormed through the glass doors of the hospital like a soul unmoored. Celeste Winters, where is my wife? The roar of his voice echoed down the sterile white hallway, freezing every nurse in place. A young nurse, her hair stuck to her cheeks with sweat and blood, stepped forward with trembling hands. Sir, she's losing blood fast. Dr. Reeves. Before the words were finished, a figure in a white coat appeared, striding quickly, her expression carved with tension. Dr. Patricia Reeves, head of obstetrics, met his eyes with urgency. Mr. Sterling, thank God you're here. We have only minutes. Donovan seized her shoulders, his voice cracking. Tell me, will she live? Please tell me she'll make it. Dr. Reeves didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, her words like stone. We've delivered the twins safely. But Celeste is hemorrhaging. The blood bank is empty. Wrecks on the highway have drained our reserves. Her type is O negative, and you're the only match. Her words struck harder than thunder. Donovan staggered, bracing against the cold white wall. They're mine. Reeves nodded gently. A boy and a girl. In that instant, the world spun out of orbit. The man who once sat on the throne of power, who measured worth in billions, now buckled under the simplest truth of all: he was about to lose everything unless he gave a part of himself. Donovan lifted his head, his voice broken, but resolute. Take it. Take whatever you need. Just save her. The doors to the operating room burst open, nurses pulling him inside. Outside, the storm still raged, but within those walls there was only the hum of machines, the rush of footsteps, and one man ready to surrender all he had for a second chance. Donovan lay back on a gurney, the needle piercing his vein. Dark red lifeblood flowed through the tube, racing into Celeste, the woman he had lost through his own coldness. Through the glass, he saw her body still and pale against the operating table. Her golden hair clung damp to her face, her skin white as porcelain. Each beep of the heart monitor stabbed into him like a blade. He whispered as if she could hear Celeste. "I'm sorry. I left you to fight alone. If there's any mercy left in fate, let me trade every dollar, every ounce of power, every bit of pride just to keep you here, just to be a father to our children." Sweat and tears blurred together, falling onto the hospital pillow. For the first time in 33 years, Donovan Sterling, the man once untouchable, admitted his powerlessness. Then a voice cut through the air. Pressures rising, the heart stabilizing. Donovan shut his eyes, his trembling hand clutching the rail of the bed. In the darkness of his mind, he saw her again 3 years earlier, standing by the penthouse door, a suitcase at her side, her voice steady and final. "We have no future." Now, as his blood ran through her veins, Donovan knew if he lost her again, it would kill him a second time. "Take all you need," he whispered hoarsely. "Just let her breathe again. Just let her open her eyes and see me." Time froze. Then relief broke through. "She's stabilizing. Blood pressure is holding steady." The words fell like grace. Donovan's body collapsed with sobs, tears streaming down the face that once hid every emotion behind the mask of a CEO. In that moment, he wasn't Donovan Sterling, billionaire and empire builder. He was only a man begging for the life of the woman he loved. So I'll ask you, if the one who once walked away now lay between life and death, would you have the courage to give them a second chance? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because moments like these could shake even the strongest heart. Chapter 2. The Shocking Truth. The sharp scent of antiseptic clung to the endless hallway. Harsh fluorescent light poured down, casting Donovan Sterling's shadow long across the sterile tiles. His drenched suit clung to him like chains, every step echoing against the cold floor, mingling with the distant steady beeping of heart monitors. The air felt suffocating, heavy with dread. Dr. Patricia Reeves walked beside him, small in stature but unshaken, her face glistening with sweat, yet her voice urgent, unyielding, as though each second was gold. "Mr. Sterling, we delivered the babies, one girl, one boy, but Celeste is in critical condition. She needs blood immediately. You're the only compatible donor." Donovan froze, the world spinning around him. His voice fractured. "A girl and a boy? You mean?" Dr. Reeves locked her gaze on his, each word deliberate, unflinching. "Twins, Mr. Sterling. Your children." The hallway seemed to stretch into infinity. His heartbeat pounded like a hammer inside his chest, his ears ringing. Images of Celeste leaving her suitcase in hand, her eyes hollow with despair, came crashing back sharper than knives. He staggered, bracing himself against the wall, whispering as if confessing to God, God, my children. And I never even knew." Outside rain still hammered the hospital windows, but inside Donovan the real storm had just begun. Dr. Reeves motioned to the nurses and gently guided him toward a plastic chair by the wall. For a man accustomed to Italian leather seats in boardrooms worth millions, this cheap cold chair became the throne of his regret. "How long?" Donovan's voice rasped. She discovered the pregnancy only weeks after the separation. Since then, she's faced every appointment alone. She worked at a bookstore, managed every vitamin, every bus ride to the hospital without anyone by her side. Each word cut deeper than the last. The images came unbidden, Celeste fragile but determined, waiting for a bus with one hand protectively cradling her stomach, while he sat across the world in Tokyo signing a $100 million deal. And Donovan's laugh was bitter, self-mocking. "I was in Switzerland raising a glass of champagne to celebrate the Yamamoto merger. God help me while she was carrying my children alone." His eyes burned red, his hands raking through his hair. The man who once faced down corporate wars without flinching now crumbled like a child under the weight of truth. Dr. Reeves placed a steady hand on his shoulder. What matters is that you're here now when it counts most. Don't waste this chance, Sterling. Don't let the truth come too late. Donovan lifted his head, his voice broken but fierce. How can I ever repay 36 weeks of fear, of sacrifice, of loneliness she bore without me? How do I redeem the nights she needed me most and I wasn't there? Then he rose, eyes blazing with resolve. I won't lose another second. Take me to her. Even if all I can do is stand in the corner, I need to be there. Reeves nodded, and together they walked on Donovan's wet shoes, leaving long streaks across the sterile white tiles. Each step carried him forward, yet his heart pulled backward into the past, into the moment when love had shattered because of his blindness. Dr. Reeves didn't lead Donovan straight into the operating room. Instead, she guided him down a side corridor to a wide observation window where thick glass separated him from what lay inside. Behind it, 2 neonatal cribs stood side by side, bathed in a soft, golden light. Beneath that glow, 2 fragile figures breathed with quiet rhythm, as though untouched by the storm raging outside. Mr. Sterling, Doctor, Reeves said gently, her voice softening for the first time that night. These are Aurora and Sebastian. Donovan froze. The names struck like lightning through the darkness in his chest. Slowly, as if one hurried step might shatter the vision before him, he approached the glass. In the first crib lay a tiny girl, wisps of pale gold hair crowning her delicate head. Her fingers curled and uncurled in the air, reaching for something unseen. Beside her, her brother slept with a furrowed brow, his expression calm and strangely resolute, as if the chaos of the world could never touch him. Donovan pressed his palm against the cold glass, his hand trembling. His breath hitched, breaking on a whisper. My God, they're so small, and they're mine. The reflection staring back at him was unrecognizable, hair disheveled suit, ruined eyes wet. But behind him, 2 tiny lives shone like undeniable proof. In a single night his world had been rewritten. They're strong, Reeves murmured. Good lungs, healthy hearts. But their mother isn't stable, and you must decide now whether to continue donating blood. Donovan spun toward her, eyes blazing. There's no question. Take whatever you need. Just keep her alive so they'll never have to call someone else mother. For the first time in his life, the heart of a man who once lived only for profits and deals trembled for something priceless, love that could never be bought. But the moment he stepped away from the nursery window, reality crashed back. Shouts filled the corridor. Shoes pounded against tile. Machines wailed from Celeste's operating room. A nurse burst through the doors, panic in her eyes. Her blood pressure's crashing. We need more blood now. Donovan ripped at his sleeve without hesitation, thrusting out his arm, the skin still raw from the last transfusion. Use this arm. Take whatever's left. I don't care. Mr. Sterling, Reeves snapped, almost shouting. You've already lost 2 units. Your body can't take much more. Do it. Donovan cut her off, his voice, fierce eyes blazing with desperation. I survived years without love and called it living. But if I lose her now, if she slips away tonight, then no matter how much blood is left in me, I'll already be a corpse. So take it. Take everything. Don't let me regret this for the rest of my life. The corridor fell silent. Doctors, nurses, staff who had only ever seen him in magazines standing untouchable at the top of the financial world now saw a man stripped bare, not a CEO but a husband on his knees before love. Reeves gave a solemn nod. The needle pierced his vein once more. His lifeblood flowed again into the tubes, into the fragile line between Celeste and eternity. Donovan closed his eyes, his voice faint as exhaustion pulled him under. Celeste? If you wake, know this for once, it wasn't the company I chose. It was you. I chose you with my blood, with my life. In that moment, Donovan Sterling was no longer the unshakable titan of Sterling Industries. He was only a man clinging to the one woman he had loved and lost, praying that fate would give them one last chance. And now the story begs the question, if you were Celeste waking from the edge of death, could you believe the promise of a man who once abandoned you when he lay bleeding just to keep you alive? Chapter 3. Redeemed by blood. The makeshift transfusion room had been set up just outside the operating theater. Cold white light bounced off sterile walls, turning the space into something that felt less like medicine and more like a prison cell built for a man facing his own sentence. And Donovan Sterling, the man once worshipped on the cover of Forbes, lay stretched across a steel gurney without even a pillow. A tourniquet bound his arm tight, holding him still. A young nurse, her hands trembling, searched for a vein beneath the tanned skin of his forearm. The needle pierced deep, and dark crimson began to flow through the clear tubing, rushing toward the room beyond the glass wall, where Celeste lay, clinging to life with every shallow breath. Donovan turned his face toward the window, his eyes locked on the woman motionless under the flood of surgical lights. Her skin was so pale the overhead lamps barely gave her color at all. Doctors' hands moved in frantic rhythm instruments, flashing monitors, screaming alarms. Together it all sounded like a dirge. Each drop of blood he surrendered felt like years of unshed tears. His lips moved in a faint whisper. "Celeste, I let you walk through every storm alone, but not this time. This time I am here with everything I have left." His body, once fueled by fine liquor and 16-hour workdays, now faltered under the loss of strength. Yet in his heart, something fierce awakened, a love buried too long, surging back like a river breaking its dam. Half conscious, he slipped into fragments of memory. He saw Celeste as she had been in the beginning, her hair tied in a messy knot, smiling as she placed a cappuccino in front of him at a small cafe. "Do you know something?" she had said, eyes bright. "It's not about always getting what you want. Sometimes it's about finding the right person beside you." The image shifted. Celeste again, but years later, alone in their vast penthouse. She sat at the dining table before a forgotten birthday cake, its candles burned to ash. Her phone screen lit up with his message from Tokyo. "Sorry, I'm tied up with meetings. Save me a slice." Her eyes that night, brimming with sorrow but trying to hold a smile, haunted him still. Now, as his blood drained into her, it felt like his guilt was leaving too. Drop by drop, carried into the veins of the woman he had wronged. His voice slurred with exhaustion, barely audible. "I let you wither in loneliness. I let your love fade. But tonight, let me atone. Let me breathe life back into us with this blood." From the other side of the glass came the urgent chorus of doctors. The rhythm of machines steadied. A nurse's voice broke through pressures stabilizing. Donovan's eyes shot open. Through the haze, he caught at a faint twitch of Celeste's hand, fragile but undeniable, as though her soul itself had reached for him. His chest tightened, his lips trembling on her name. Celeste. He longed to break free, to hold her, to shield her, but his body was strapped to the gurney, tethered to her through the line of blood. That thin, transparent tube became something greater than plastic. It was the cord of fate binding them once again, unyielding, unbreakable. The blood drained from Donovan's body, leaving his head spinning. The strips of white light above blurred, swirling as if the ceiling itself were collapsing. He clenched his jaw, forcing his eyes to stay open. Through the glass, he saw Celeste's chest rise and fall under the rhythm of the ventilator. He heard the urgent voices of the doctors. "Hold the pressure. Don't let it crash again." Donovan's fingers dug into the edge of the gurney, nails biting into his palm. With every drop of blood he lost, it felt as though another piece of his strength was slipping away. And then the memory came. The night she left. The penthouse had been dark, save for the glow of the city beyond the windows. Celeste stood with her suitcase at her feet, her voice hoarse but resolute. "I'm exhausted, Donovan. You have time for everyone. Except me." He had reached for her, then torn between pleading and anger. "Everything I do is for us. For your future." She had shaken her head, tears cutting down her cheeks. "No, you do it for yourself. And I can't love a man who treats love like another contract to sign." Then she walked out the door, closing behind her, leaving him alone in all the emptiness money could buy. Now, as the needle drained the very life from his veins, Donovan finally understood love could never be bought with promises or status. Love was presence. and presence was the one thing he had failed to give. A nurse's voice pierced the fog. "Mr. Sterling, your blood pressure is dropping too quickly. We have to stop." He shook his head, lips pale, his words broken, but stubborn. "No. Keep going. Take more, if that's what it takes." His body trembled, cold sweat soaking his collar, yet his eyes never left Celeste's form beyond the glass. Then through the haze he heard it, shouts of triumph from the operating room. "Her pressure's stabilizing. The heart rhythm is back." The room erupted with relief. Donovan tilted his head, tears streaking down his temple. On the monitor, faint green lines began to rise and fall with steady rhythm. Celeste, who moments ago was slipping into the dark, was fighting her way back, sustained by his blood. A broken laugh escaped him, tangled with sobs. "You're still here, Celeste. You heard me, didn't you? This time, I really chose you." The nurse withdrew the needle, rushing to steady him as his body sagged. But Donovan brushed her aside weakly, his gaze still locked on the woman beyond the glass. Only when he was sure she was breathing, that she was alive, would he let himself fall into darkness. And in that fragile silence he heard it, whether in his fading consciousness or reality itself, he could not tell. Celeste's voice, thin, trembling, but achingly familiar, whispered his name. "Donovan." His blurred eyes closed, and with the last of his strength, he answered softly into the void. "I'm here. And this time, I won't let you go." The hospital lights were still cold and sterile, but to Donovan they glowed with warmth. Not because the color had changed, but because in the heart of a man once made of steel, hope had begun to burn again. If you believed a love was long dead, but fate offered you one chance to redeem it, not with words but with action, would you take it, or let it slip away? Chapter 4. Shattered Memories. Donovan sat slumped in a hard plastic chair in the waiting room, his body drained after 2 rounds of transfusion. His veins ached, his muscles trembled, but it was his heart, not his body, that refused to rest. Every time he closed his eyes, memories rushed back like a flood, drowning him in a pain far deeper than the needle in his arm. He saw Celeste in the penthouse kitchen, a space dressed in imported marble and lit by a crystal chandelier. Amid all that luxury, she sat alone at the long dining table set for 10. On the table lay a plate of pasta. She had carefully prepared the same dish Donovan once praised on their very first date. A single candle flickered, casting fragile light. The clock struck 8. She waited in her simple blue dress, her gaze drifting to the door with quiet hope. 9 o'clock came, then 10. The candle burned out and the pasta grew cold. Her phone buzzed at last with a single message, stark and lifeless. "Sorry, I'm stuck in negotiations. Eat without me." Celeste forced a small, brittle smile, but the tears betrayed her. She blew out the candle, packed away the meal, leaving a portion in the refrigerator. A portion? Donovan glanced at the next morning before rushing off to another boardroom. In the memory, Donovan saw her eyes, clearly eyes that had waited, hoped, and slowly surrendered to loneliness. His chest tightened, breath catching in regret. Whispering into the sterile air of the waiting room, he confessed, "I left you to eat dinner alone." Again and again. And in doing so, I lost the simplest gift of all, sitting beside you, hearing about your day. Another memory surged forward, sharper still. Their first wedding anniversary. Celeste had prepared for weeks, choosing a soft white dress, reserving a table at the little restaurant where they first fell in love. She had wanted to bring him back to the beginning, to remind him of how deeply they once believed in forever. But the table she reserved stayed empty. She called only to hear his secretary's clipped reply, "Mr. Sterling is in Tokyo. Emergency meetings. I'll let him know you called." So Celeste sat there alone, candlelight glinting off the tear that slipped into her glass of wine. A waiter, pity in his eyes, set down a small cake with "Happy Anniversary" scrawled in frosting. She pressed her lips together, lifted her phone, and left a message that trembled with forced sweetness. "Happy anniversary, my love. I'll save you a slice." That same night, Donovan stood beneath a glowing screen, presenting a deal worth hundreds of millions. The room roared with applause as he closed the merger, while his wife sat in a restaurant staring at the empty chair across from her. Now, in the hospital waiting room, the memory cut him in two. He realized those echoes of applause had long since become the sound of something shattering their marriage, their trust, their love. She wanted nothing more than one night, one simple celebration. His voice broke, his fists tightening, and I chose the world's applause over her smile. For the first time, Donovan buried his face in his hands. Hot tears spilled freely, tears he had once buried behind the mask of an untouchable CEO. The cruelest memory rose sharp and merciless. That night, Donovan had returned home at 2 a.m, straight from a marathon meeting in Singapore, followed by an overnight flight. The penthouse lay in darkness, but when he switched on the light, he froze. Celeste was sitting in the living room. A suitcase rested at her feet. Her blue eyes, once radiant with faith, were hollow now, carved deep with exhaustion. Her voice rasped like something worn thin. Another night, and I've realized I have nothing left to wait for. The words staggered him. What are you saying? It was just one deal. Celeste, you know what my work demands. She rose, her voice calm in a way that terrified him more than her tears. You always have a reason, Donovan. But I don't need reasons anymore. I need a husband, and clearly you're no longer that man. He stepped forward, hand reaching desperately. Celeste, everything I've done, it's for you, for our future. Her laugh cracked like glass. Our future, Donovan, you built an empire the world admires, but you never noticed the woman in this room falling apart day by day. Tears traced her cheeks as she gripped the suitcase handle. I loved you with everything I had, but now, there's nothing left to give. Goodbye. The door slammed, echoing like thunder, the final sound that extinguished the last flame of their marriage. Now, in the sterile hospital waiting room, Donovan bent forward, his whole body trembling. He had let her walk away that night, convinced that wealth and power would draw her back. But he had been wrong, so wrong he had nearly lost everything. After Celeste left, he drifted through the penthouse rooms, glittering with luxury, but cold as a tomb. He remembered every detail, the paintings she had chosen for the walls, the patterned pillows she loved on the sofa. They were all still there, but the house echoed only with the lonely click of his own footsteps on marble. Once he opened the refrigerator and found the small container she had left behind with a note taped to it. Don't work too late. Please eat something. He had scoffed, then tossed it in the trash. But now that memory cut like a blade, because she had loved him in the smallest ways, while he had given her nothing in return. He remembered the nights when he came home to nothing but a glass of whiskey and the cold glow of stock tickers on his screen. The vast bedroom, the empty bed. Celeste's scent fading more each day. He had told himself he was strong, that work would fill the void. But it hadn't. Each deal closed made the house feel bigger, emptier, lonelier. In the hospital now, Donovan's fists clenched, his jaw set. The harsh white light carved hollows into his face, but his eyes burned with fire. Celeste, I let you go once, but I swear I will never lose you again. His broad shoulders shook, ragged sobs tearing through the frozen armor of the CEO he once was. If you lived in a house filled with every luxury yet stripped of love, could you truly call it a home? Chapter 5. The Cold Distance. The hospital room glowed harsh under fluorescent light. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence, each rhythm a fragile reminder that life still lingered here. Donovan sat slumped at her bedside, his hand gripping Celeste's slender fingers, as though they were the only tether keeping him upright. He had not left for hours. His suit, once worth thousands, was wrinkled and ruined. His tie discarded, his hair disheveled. Every sound, the hiss of machines, the shuffle of a nurse's step, made him lift his head like a guard watching over the most precious treasure of his life. Then her fingers moved. Her lashes fluttered. Slowly, Celeste's pale blue eyes blinked against the blinding light, unfocused, staring toward the ceiling. Celeste. Donovan's voice cracked, breaking into a whisper of disbelief. God, you're awake. Her breath came shallow. Memory crept back piece by piece, and instinctively her hand lifted to her belly, now empty. Her eyes widened in panic. The babies! Donovan squeezed her hand tight, his voice rushing to comfort. They're safe. A boy and a girl, both strong. Celeste, you did it. You gave us a miracle. But instead of relief, her gaze hardened into ice. She turned slowly, her voice fragile yet edged like steel. You weren't on my emergency contact list. Why are you even here? The words cut deeper than any scalpel. Donovan's throat closed, but he forced himself to answer. They said the files were outdated. But thank God they called me. Otherwise, I would have lost you. I would have lost all of you. Celeste's eyes closed, and a tear slipped down her cheek. Not a tear of joy, but of anguish. When she looked at him again, her voice was hoarse, but clear enough to strip him bare. Do you have any idea what I've been through? 36 weeks, alone. The sickness that wouldn't stop, the blood pressure spikes, the nights I thought I might lose them. Where were you, Donovan? He clasped her hand tighter, his own eyes bloodshot. I didn't know. Celeste, if I had. What she cut him off, a bitter laugh cracking like glass. You would have wired money, hired another private doctor, opened a new trust fund for the twins, Donovan. I didn't need you to buy your presents. I needed a husband. I needed a father for my children. And that you've never been. Each word lashed across him like a whip. His head bowed, his hand trembling in hers. For the first time, he had no defense. The boardroom confidence, the armor of certainty, none of it could stand against her truth. Her voice grew sharper, the memories spilling out like wounds she could no longer keep hidden. I sat in an emergency ward on Christmas Eve, bleeding, terrified I was losing them alone. I rode 3 buses every appointment, clutching my belly while strangers shoved past me. And you, where were you then? Donovan's voice was a whisper, small and broken, like a child lost in the dark. I was signing a deal. In Geneva. Celeste's laugh broke again, jagged and wet with tears. That's right. Geneva, Tokyo, Singapore. Anywhere but here. Anywhere but beside me. He lifted his hand to wipe her tears, but she turned her face away. The distance was only inches, yet it felt like an ocean. His voice shook. I was wrong. So wrong there's no excuse left. But Celeste, I beg you, please, give me a chance. Her eyes met his at last, sharp and weary, brimming with hurt. A chance? You want a chance now when everything is already broken, when I almost died and only then you remembered you had a family. Her words left him speechless. For the first time, the truth stripped Donovan Sterling, the untouchable CEO, down to nothing more than a man caught in the wreckage of his own making. Would you forgive someone who only realized your worth at the edge of death? Or would the wound cut too deep to ever heal? The air in the room thickened, as if even the heart monitor slowed to listen to every word between them. Donovan remained seated at her bedside, yet the distance between them stretched wider than 1,000 miles. Celeste stared at the ceiling, her voice trembling but steady, each syllable edged with quiet strength. Do you know why I never told you I was pregnant? Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd treat our children like another project, raise them the way you close a business deal, planned, structured, negotiated. I didn't want them to grow up thinking love was an obligation. Each word squeezed Donovan's chest tighter. Celeste, I never thought of you or them that way. I was blind, yes, but I never saw you as a duty. You were everything. It's just that the company always came first. Her voice cut sharp, her eyes drilling into him with the coldness of truth. You said you loved me, but how many nights did I go to sleep alone? How many times did I set aside a birthday gift, waiting only to put it back in the closet when you never came home? How many midnights did I sit in the living room listening to the clock strike 12 while you were still on another plane to another country? Donovan bent his head, his voice hoarse. I remember every one of those nights, every one of those memories, and they're killing me now piece by piece. Celeste's face turned away, tears sliding into her hair. But what killed me, she whispered, was that you never saw it while I was still there. You only see me now when I'm almost gone. You only see my worth when it's too late." The words carved him open. Donovan buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The man who once stood invincible before the world now wept like a broken child in the sterile quiet of the hospital room. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red, his voice unsteady but resolute. "Celeste, I'm not asking for forgiveness tonight. All I ask is to stay, to prove myself not with promises, but with actions. I've stepped down as CEO. I've handed Sterling Industries to Garrett. I just want to be a father, to be the man you once believed I could be." Celeste's gaze, still rimmed with ice, did not soften. "You think one decision erases 3 years of abandonment, that stepping down wipes away the nights I curled up in a tiny apartment sick with morning sickness and no one to hold me, or the day I nearly delivered too soon and no one was there." His lips pressed tight, silence swallowing him whole. Her head turned, her voice a whisper, but each word struck like a hammer. "You can change, Donovan, but I don't know if my heart has the strength to believe you again. The cracks are still there, and I don't know if they'll ever heal." Beyond the glass, the first pale light of morning crept in, painting Celeste's face in a fragile glow. Her beauty was still there, but it was veiled now by the exhaustion of a woman who had fought too long alone. Donovan reached out but stopped midair, his hand trembling. He knew one wrong touch and the wall of ice would close forever. So he lowered it slowly, his voice breaking into a vow. "I won't force you, but I'll be here. Every day, every hour, until you believe me, until you see that this time, I will not disappear." Celeste gave no reply. She closed her eyes, letting silent tears fall into the pillow. And in that silence, the distance between two hearts once intertwined remained a gulf waiting for time or fate to decide whether it could ever be crossed again. Can love be reborn from a heart abandoned too many times? Or are some fractures destined to remain unhealed no matter how much blood is shed to mend them? Chapter 6. The CEO's Turning Point. The long night inside the hospital finally gave way to dawn. A pale wash of blue light seeped through the windows, softening the sterile white of the corridors. Donovan sat in the waiting area, his phone heavy in his palm like a stone that carried the weight of his entire empire. The screen lit up Board of Sterling Industries. Inside, dozens of faces appeared waiting for him in a video call. Normally, this was where Donovan Sterling reigned like a king, every decision he made able to tilt markets across the globe. But today he felt not like a king, but a man about to confess defeat. He pressed join. One by one, the faces of the directors appeared, many still bleary-eyed from time zones, but all tight with expectation. Garrett, his CFO and oldest ally, spoke first, his voice edged with irritation. "Donovan, where have you been all night? Where's the report for the Japan deal?" Donovan lifted his head, his voice gravelly, but razor sharp. "There will be no report. There will be no meeting with Japan. As of this morning, I resign as CEO of Sterling Industries." Silence detonated like a bomb. On the screen, faces froze, jaws slack, disbelief etched across every square. One director practically shouted, "Are you insane? We're on the verge of the biggest deal of the decade. If you walk away now, the stock will collapse." Donovan's eyes locked on the camera, unwavering. "I built this empire with blood and time. But last night I realized an empire cannot replace a family. I would rather lose this company than lose my last chance to be a husband and a father." The other side erupted into chaos, arguments, protests, voices layered over one another. But Donovan barely heard them. For the first time, silence reigned in his heart, the calm of a man who had finally found the road he should have walked long ago. The accusations flew. "You can't do this. Sterling, thousands of employees depend on you. This isn't just a company, it's your legacy. You're letting emotions destroy everything you built." Donovan sat still, letting the storm pass until his memory cut through the noise. Celeste's voice, faint but unyielding on that hospital bed. "Where were you, Donovan? Where were you when I needed you most?" He raised his hand and the boardroom voices stilled. "You talk of employees, you talk of legacy. But have any of you ever sat through the night in a hospital waiting room, frozen with fear that your wife may not survive the operating table? Have you ever seen your children behind glass so fragile that every breath felt like a miracle? I have. And from that moment, this company became nothing but numbers. My family is flesh and blood. For a long moment, silence hung. Then Garrett leaned back, his face lined with conflict. At last, he exhaled. Donovan, are you absolutely certain? Once you step down, there's no way back. Donovan's bloodshot eyes burned with clarity. I am certain. I don't want to come back. Garrett, from today forward, you'll lead Sterling Industries. I'll remain the largest shareholder, but I will no longer run it. This company deserves someone who can give it everything, and I need to give everything I have left to my family. The board fell quiet. For the first time in his career, Donovan wasn't seeking consensus. He didn't need their approval. This decision wasn't for the markets, it was for his heart. He ended the call and let the phone drop onto the chair beside him. A long breath escaped his chest, the sound of a man setting down the heaviest burden of his life. In the hallway of the hospital, morning light spilled across Donovan Sterling. He closed his eyes, whispering a vow. Celeste, this time I choose you. The ripples of Donovan's decision spread faster than any deal he had ever signed. Within hours, his phone buzzed, relentlessly calls from the press, financial channels, even rival executives. Everyone wanted to know, why had Donovan Sterling, the Iron Man of Wall Street, suddenly walked away from his throne? A reporter cornered him in the hospital lobby as he stepped outside to breathe after the long night. Cameras focused on his gaunt face, the dark circles beneath his eyes and the clarity that still burned in them. Mr. Sterling, the reporter's voice rang out. Is it true you've resigned? Aren't you afraid of the stock collapse? What could possibly make you step down? Donovan paused, adjusting the wrinkled coat that once symbolized power. He looked directly into the lens, his voice raw but steady. I once believed success was measured in profits and billion-dollar deals. But last night, sitting in a waiting room praying my ex-wife would survive the operating table, I realized no number is worth more than the heartbeat of someone you love. I didn't resign out of weakness. I resigned because for the first time in my life, I understand what real victory looks like. The hallway stirred with murmurs. Cameras zoomed closer, capturing the moment when the untouchable CEO's eyes brimmed with tears. Donovan continued his words, as much for Celeste as for the world. I was a terrible husband, an absent father. But from this day forward, I choose to be a father first, a husband first, before anything else. This company can survive without me. My family cannot. It was not just an answer to the press. It was a vow. Public. Irrevocable. When he returned to Celeste's room, she still lay with her eyes closed, resting. He sank into the chair at her bedside. Dawn spilled across the sheets, softening her pale face, making her look almost weightless in sleep. He couldn't be sure if she had heard the statement outside, but he leaned close, his voice breaking into a whisper. I've left that world behind, Celeste. The throne, the numbers, the applause, it's all gone. I gave it up so I could be here. So I never miss another breath of yours, another smile of our children. He clasped her frail hand, lifting it to his lips, kissing the cold fingers gently. I don't ask for forgiveness today. All I ask is to stay, to prove every single day that love isn't a contract, it's a choice. And Celeste, I choose you, always you. Outside the window, the sun had risen brighter than he had ever seen it. To Donovan, it was more than morning light, it was the first day of a new life. And so the question lingers, can true love sometimes only begin after everything else has already ended? Chapter 7. Learning to be a father. Soft light filtered through the nursery windows, casting a warm glow over two tiny bassinets side by side. Aurora and Sebastian, two fragile lives, slept quietly beneath their blankets. On the other side of the glass, Donovan stood frozen. The man who once signed billion-dollar contracts, who made decisions that left entire markets trembling, now found himself hesitating before two beings no bigger than his forearm. A nurse smiled kindly at him. Mr. Sterling, would you like to hold your baby? Donovan swallowed hard, his hands large, calloused, not from labor, but from years gripping pens and contracts, shook as he extended them. "They're so small. I'm afraid I'll drop her." "You won't," the nurse assured gently. "Just hold with your heart and your hands will know what to do." With careful grace, the nurse placed Aurora in his arms. The warmth of her tiny body, the faint scent of milk clinging to her skin, it froze Donovan in place. He looked down, just as her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes clear as morning dew, staring straight into him. In that instant, the world shifted. All the numbers, the deals, the glass and steel boardrooms, they vanished. There was only him and this delicate girl in his arms. "Hello, Aurora?" Donovan's voice cracked, tears filling his eyes. "It's your dad. I know I came late, but from now on I'll never miss another moment." As if answering him, Aurora's little hand curled around his finger. That single grip, so small, so fragile, was enough to make Donovan Sterling, a man who once thought he owned the world, feel for the first time that he truly belonged somewhere. Later that afternoon, Donovan faced a new challenge, changing Sebastian's diaper. Surrounded by amused nurses, he rolled up his sleeves and unbuttoned his shirt cuffs as though preparing for a high-stakes negotiation. "All right, young man, let's make this quick and clean, just like a good deal." Sebastian's response came loud and clear, a shrill cry that echoed through the room. Donovan's eyes widened, fumbling with the soiled diaper. But before he could set the new one in place, Sebastian kicked hard, sending everything flying to the floor. Wait, don't kick, son." "I surrender." The nurses burst into laughter, but when one tried to step in, Donovan held up a hand. "No, I have to do this. If I can't change a diaper, how can I call myself a father?" He drew in a steadying breath, concentrating as though preparing to sign the most important contract of his life. Slowly, carefully, he worked step by step. And this time, success. The diaper was fastened snugly, neatly. Sebastian stopped crying, his big round eyes locking onto Donovan with quiet curiosity. Donovan dropped into a chair, exhaling hard as though he'd just survived a war. Then a laugh slipped through, tangled with tears of joy. "I once closed deals bigger than entire nations. But today, changing my son's diaper is the greatest victory of my life." Night settled over the hospital. The hallway lights spilled a soft golden glow into the nursery. Inside, Aurora's cry pierced the quiet, sharp and unrelenting, until even Sebastian startled awake with a whimper of his own. Donovan rushed forward, scooping his daughter into his arms with the clumsiness of a soldier in his first battle. He rocked her awkwardly, panic rising as her wails only grew louder. His face paled. "God, how do I make you stop crying?" A nurse's gentle voice offered, "You could try singing to her." Singing? Donovan gave a broken laugh. He, the man who had never raised his voice outside a boardroom, now being asked to sing. Yet, as he looked at Aurora's flushed face and trembling lips, he knew he had no choice. He cleared his throat, then began haltingly, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." His voice was hoarse, off-key, nothing like a lullaby. But something miraculous happened. Aurora's cries softened her tiny eyes, blinking up at him, one hand clutching his collar. Even Sebastian stilled in his bassinet as though listening too. Tears blurred Donovan's vision as he kept singing, his voice breaking on the words. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. By the time his voice faded, both children had drifted back into sleep, their breaths rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Donovan sank into a chair, holding Aurora close, whispering through his tears, "I've spoken to contracts and investors my whole life, but this broken song is the only thing I've ever been proud to sing." Just then, a nurse wheeled Celeste to the nursery doors. She had insisted, no matter how weak she was, on seeing her babies herself. But as she reached the glass, the sight before her stopped her cold. Through the window, she saw Donovan, rumpled, exhausted, his arms cradling Aurora, his cracked voice still humming against her tiny ear. This was not the cold CEO who once put business before love. This was a man clinging to his children as though they were the only treasure he had left in the world. His eyes shone with a love Celeste had once begged for during 3 long years of marriage. Now it was there, raw and unhidden. Celeste covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The nurse laid a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "He's been here the whole time." He's changed diapers, fed them, even sung them to sleep, things none of us ever thought Donovan Sterling could do. Celeste's lips trembled, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Has he really changed?" Inside the room, Donovan bent low and kissed Aurora's forehead, murmuring, "Sleep well, little princess. I'll be here every night, until you know I'll never walk away again." Celeste sobbed softly, and for the first time in years, something in her heart softened too, a fragile seed of trust sprouting through the ashes of pain. If you were Celeste watching the man who once abandoned you now stumble, fumble, and pour his whole heart into caring for his children, would you believe people can truly change? Chapter 8. The First Flicker of Trust. That morning, sunlight filtered through the white curtains, painting the nursery in a warm golden glow. Celeste winced as the nurse wheeled her forward. The incision still ached, but the pull of longing was stronger. She needed to see her babies, and she needed to see Donovan with them. When the chair reached the doorway, she froze. Donovan was sitting cross-legged on the floor, his once impeccable suit crumpled, his tie hanging loosely over a chair arm. Before him were the two bassinets, Aurora fussing restlessly, Sebastian kicking and squealing with laughter. Leaning forward, Donovan's voice was low, gentle, almost playful. "Now, Sebastian, you can't laugh at your sister's misery. That's not fair. And you, Aurora, sweetheart, I know you're mad, but if you keep crying like this, your old man has no chance at all." A laugh nearly escaped Celeste's lips. The sight was worlds away from the polished, untouchable CEO she had once known. This man wasn't perched on a throne of power. He was on the hospital floor making a fool of himself just to comfort his children. Then it happened. Aurora's cries stopped. Her tiny eyes locked on her father, and she smiled. Donovan's mouth fell open, his face lighting up as though he'd just secured the greatest deal of his life. "Celeste, did you see that he said to no one, forgetting she wasn't there?" She smiled. "God, this is the sweetest contract I'll ever sign." Celeste's hand flew to her mouth, a hot tear sliding down her cheek. But this time the tears weren't born of pain. They were born of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The nurse gently pushed her chair closer. Donovan still hadn't noticed. He was too busy making silly voices, playing a game of who can hold Daddy's finger the longest. Sebastian clung tight, gripping Donovan's hand with surprising strength. Donovan laughed, his eyes glistening. "This little guy's going to be stubborn, I can already tell, just like his father." Without thinking, Celeste whispered, "Poor Aurora, then." Donovan spun around, startled. And there she was, Celeste seated in her wheelchair, a fragile smile ghosting across her lips. For days it had been only tears and silence. But now a smile, small, fleeting, was enough to shatter him. You just smiled?" he whispered, his throat tight. Celeste hesitated, her gaze flickering. "Maybe because you looked ridiculous." Donovan laughed through the ache in his chest. "Then ridiculous I'll be. If it means seeing you smile, I'll gladly be a fool for the rest of my life." The room fell quiet again, save for the soft breaths of their children. But in that silence, Celeste felt something stir deep inside, a fragile seed she had buried long ago. For the first time in years, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, Donovan had truly changed. That night, the hospital was so still that only two sounds remained: the steady beep of the monitor and the rain falling softly against the glass. Celeste lay restless, unable to sleep. At last, she asked the nurse to wheel her to the nursery, her heart aching with the need to see her children. When the chair stopped at the window, she froze. Inside, Donovan held Aurora in his arms. He swayed gently, his rough voice carrying a lullaby through the silence. Somewhere, over the rainbow. Celeste's breath caught. It was the very song she used to hum years ago, back when he was just the arrogant regular at her cafe who stayed longer than anyone else, pretending to read while secretly listening to her sing. He had never remembered the lyrics then, and yet now he sang it through, imperfect and trembling, but whole. Aurora was perfectly still, her tiny lips curved as though smiling in a dream. Donovan bent low, whispering to his daughter, "Do you know, sweetheart, This was the song your mother once sang for me. Back then, I thought every other voice in the world was unnecessary, and I was right because hers was enough. Celeste pressed her hand to her chest. The ache there wasn't from the scar of her incision. It was from hearing the words he had never spoken when she needed them most. Words he saved until this night in the quiet glow of the nursery, with their child asleep against his heart. A tear slipped down her hand, mingling with the sound of rain beyond the glass. By morning, sunlight spilled across the floor. Celeste was wheeled into the nursery again, this time to hold both children in her arms. Donovan was already there, hollow-eyed, but glowing with a strange brightness. Gently, he placed Sebastian into her lap. Celeste gathered him close, inhaling the sweet scent of milk, her eyes brimming. Donovan watched in silence, afraid to disturb the fragile peace. But then Celeste broke it herself. "I heard you singing last night." He startled, his lips twitching with self-mockery. "I must have sounded awful." Celeste shook her head. "No. For the first time, I heard you sing not for the world, but for your family." His eyes blurred, his voice hushed and breaking. "Celeste, I don't ask for forgiveness yet. Only that you believe me when I say every song, every step from this day on, will be for you and for them." She sat in silence for a long moment, stroking Sebastian's soft hair. Then she lifted her gaze, her blue eyes no longer hard with ice, but softened, hesitant. "I can't promise to believe completely, not yet. But maybe I can begin to try." It was the first crack in the wall she had built since the divorce. And in that fragile opening, Donovan felt his heart come alive again. Sometimes in love, doesn't trust begin with something as small as a single sentence, yet enough to change an entire life? Chapter 9. The Second Proposal. 6 months after Celeste's near-death delivery, Donovan's penthouse no longer felt like the cold museum it once was. Gone were the abstract paintings and lifeless furniture. In their place, strollers, soft rugs, and the musical babble of two babies learning to laugh. That evening, the city was drenched in the red glow of sunset. From the balcony on the 50th floor, the last light of day poured across the skyline, turning the glass towers into rivers of fire. Celeste stood at the railing, her hair drifting in the breeze. Her eyes gazed outward, carrying a peace Donovan hadn't seen in her for years. Inside, Aurora and Sebastian had finally fallen asleep. Donovan stepped onto the balcony, his hand trembling around a small velvet box hidden in his pocket. His heart pounded wildly. The man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without so much as a flicker of doubt now struggled to breathe, terrified of this one question. Celeste turned at the sound of his footsteps. Sunset lit her face, and her blue eyes shone like a deep, uncharted lake. "I thought you were still reading to Sebastian," she said softly. Donovan smiled, stepping closer. "I finished. He went down faster than any partner I've ever closed a deal with." Celeste laughed, light, unguarded, like the brush of wind. That laugh told Donovan what he needed to know. This was the moment he should have given her years ago. He stopped just behind her, looking out over the city. Then, with a breath that shook through him, he dropped to one knee in the glow of dusk. Celeste spun around, startled. The wind lifted her hair, and in the molten light of sunset, Donovan kneeling before her looked like a scene from a film she had once dreamed of, but never dared believe would return. He opened the box. Inside wasn't the massive diamond from years ago, but a simple gold band set with 2 small stones, one ruby, one sapphire. Lifting his eyes to hers, Donovan spoke, his voice raw but steady. "Celeste, 3 years ago I proposed with a diamond. I talked about contracts, about benefits, about the perfect merger. And then I lost everything because I never understood what marriage truly meant. Today I kneel here not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but simply as Donovan, a man who longs to be your husband again. And this ring." He lifted it, and the ruby and sapphire caught the last rays of the setting sun, blazing red and blue. "Isn't about wealth. It's a reminder of Aurora and Sebastian, the 2 miracles who gave me a second chance. Ruby for Aurora, the small flame that never goes out. Sapphire for Sebastian, the calm sky I've been searching for From now on, every choice, every step we take will carry their names, reminding us that this family is our greatest treasure. Celeste pressed a trembling hand to her lips as tears streamed down her cheeks. This proposal held no luxury, no pride. It was clumsy, vulnerable, achingly sincere, and it left her breathless. Celeste stood still, her tears falling freely, her heart torn in every direction. Before her knelt the very man who had once broken her, yet here he was, offering a ring with nothing but raw sincerity. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Donovan, do you know the wounds you left? They don't heal easily. All those years I was alone in that little apartment working through my pregnancy. So many nights I asked myself, if something happened to me, would you ever know? And if you knew, would you even care?" Donovan bowed his head, gripping the ring box tightly. His voice cracked under the weight of his confession. "I know an apology will never be enough. I missed everything that mattered, and nothing can bring those days back. But Celeste, I swear, for the rest of my life, every day, every hour, I'll be here. Not out of duty, out of love. The love I was too blind to see before, but not too late to live for now." Celeste searched his eyes. For the first time, she didn't see the gleam of a proud CEO, but the unguarded gaze of a man stripped bare, marked by regret, yet burning with longing. And in that moment, she realized trust had begun to bloom again, fragile but real deep within her heart. She drew a shaky breath, tears sliding down her cheeks, as a faint smile broke through. Extending her hand, she whispered, "I won't promise this will be easy. I won't promise to forget. But I'll say yes to trying again. Not for the past, for the present. For Aurora, for Sebastian, and for me." A sob escaped Donovan as he slid the ring onto her finger. The ruby and sapphire caught the dying light of sunset, glittering like two small stars, silent witnesses of a new beginning. He rose, gathering her into his arms. The wind swept around them, tangling their hair together. In that embrace, there was no CEO and no abandoned wife, only two hearts that had been lost, now finding their way home. Celeste pressed her lips near his ear, her voice soft but firm. "Don't disappoint me again, Donovan." He held her tighter, his reply steady and resolute. "I won't. Because this time, I won't just make promises. I'll live them, every single day." The city sank into twilight, but for them, it was not an ending. It was the first light of a new dawn, and so the question lingers. In love, what matters more? A perfect beginning or a second chance, sincere enough to rewrite the story? Chapter 10. Home again. 6 months after the second proposal, Donovan Sterling's penthouse was unrecognizable. The cold sculptures were gone, replaced with wooden shelves lined with children's books. The sleek glass table now bore bottles, muslin cloths, and a music box. And the once luxurious Persian rug no longer served as mere decoration, it had become the playground of two tiny lives. Aurora crawled clumsily across the floor, her little palms slapping the rug with cheerful pats. Sebastian, still learning to sit upright, stared wide-eyed at the world around him, bursting into laughter whenever Donovan made a silly face. From the doorway, Celeste leaned against the frame, a warm cup of tea in her hand. Her heart brimmed with something she hadn't felt in years, peace. For the first time in so long, she was standing inside a home, not just a house. Donovan bore no trace of the cold CEO he once was. Dressed in a simple sweater, he knelt on the rug with arms wide open as though ready to catch the whole world. When Aurora crawled toward him, he cheered like a boy winning a game. "That's it, princess, right here, just a little more." Aurora squealed with laughter, tumbling into his arms. Donovan hugged her close, pressing a kiss into her fine baby hair, his eyes shining with the joy of something simple, something real. Celeste smiled, soft, fragile, but full of new trust. That afternoon, rain traced silver lines against the tall windows, softening the cityscape beyond. In the living room, the fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over all four of them. Celeste sat on the sofa with Sebastian in her lap. He giggled, reaching for a toy that chimed with music. Beside her, Donovan held Aurora, gently swaying to the tune. "Do you remember?" Celeste asked quietly, eyes fixed on the flames. "There was a time when this room felt so cold I wanted to leave it just to feel alive. But now I don't want to be anywhere else." Donovan turned toward her, his voice deep, steady. "I remember. I also remember coming home to find the apartment dark, you sitting silently by the window. Back then I told myself I'll make it up to her soon. But I never did." Celeste tightened her hold on Sebastian, then glanced at Aurora, her little head resting against her father's shoulder. "But now it's different. I see you, really here, every day." Donovan nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I made a promise, and I'll live that promise. No more late meetings, no more endless flights, just us." And then it came. Aurora babbled a sound that landed like a miracle, something that almost resembled Dada. Sebastian answered with a string of joyful noises, as though determined not to be left out. Celeste and Donovan burst into laughter, their eyes meeting, long, steady, unbroken. In that look lay all the fractures and all the healing bound together at last. The penthouse was no longer just glass and steel. It was warmth, laughter, a second chance woven into the fabric of everyday life. At long last, it was home. Night fell, and with the twins fast asleep, Celeste and Donovan sat together on the living room rug. Rain whispered against the tall glass windows, its rhythm blending with the warmth of the crackling fire, an intimacy this home had never known before. On the blanket nearby, Aurora and Sebastian slept side by side, their tiny hands unconsciously clasped together. Celeste bent down, brushing her fingers against her daughter's cheek, her eyes shimmering. "I used to believe they would grow up without a father, that I would carry them alone on these small shoulders. But looking at them now, I know I'm not alone anymore." Donovan's arms slipped around her, drawing her close. His voice, low and ragged with emotion, broke the quiet. "Celeste, I miss too much already, but I swear to you, to them, I will never miss another moment again. Laughter or tears, I'll be here. I don't want to be the CEO of an empire anymore. I just want to be the CEO of this home." Celeste lifted her face, her eyes locking with his. In the glow of the fire, the steel in his gaze was gone, replaced with something far softer, love, unguarded and true. "Then I'll hold you to that promise," she whispered. They embraced, and in that embrace there was no bitterness left, only a family stitched back together with love and fragile trust. The following morning, golden light poured into the living room. Aurora pulled herself up against the sofa, teetering on unsteady legs. Across the room, Sebastian waved as though calling her to him. Donovan and Celeste held their breath, watching. 1 step, 2, 3. Aurora wobbled, then fell into Celeste's waiting arms. A heartbeat later, Sebastian crawled eagerly into Donovan's lap, laughing triumphantly. The room erupted in laughter. Donovan lifted his son high. Celeste cradled her daughter close. Their eyes met across the space between them, and for the first time in years there was no distance. "This," Donovan whispered, his voice breaking, "this is the greatest achievement of my life." Celeste smiled through her tears, her voice a soft vow, "And it's the true beginning of ours." They sank onto the rug together, the twins tucked safely in their arms. 4 hearts beat as one wrapped in sunlight that chased away every shadow of the past. Home had returned, no longer built of marble and glass, but of laughter, love, and the daily choice to stay. And so the story leaves us with a question: is true happiness found in success? The world applauds. Or in those quiet moments when you look around and realize you're already sitting in the center of everything that matters, needing nothing more. Wholehearted love. That evening, the penthouse was no longer the cold tower of a lonely billionaire. In the living room, golden light spread gently across the space, the fireplace crackling with warmth. On the rug, Aurora and Sebastian crawled clumsily, their eyes shining like twin stars. Donovan sat cross-legged on the floor, Celeste leaning against his shoulder, both of them watching as their twins made their first unsteady attempts to move across the world. Then suddenly, Aurora lifted her head, her tiny mouth opening to form two clear, miraculous syllables. Da, da. The room seemed to hold its breath. Donovan froze, his heart trembling as tears welled in his eyes, shimmering beneath the light. Never in his life had he heard a sound so sacred. Not to be outdone, Sebastian joined in, babbling proudly, "Dada, Dada." Celeste laughed through her tears, gathering both children into her arms. Donovan, still stunned, quickly wrapped all three of them into his embrace. Pressing his face into their hair, his voice broke with gratitude. "Thank you for letting me hear this. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a father, a husband, a family." In that moment, every regret, every wound melted away, leaving only one eternal truth. You can build an empire, but it means nothing if you lose your family. The greatest wealth in this life is love and presence. True love is not found in diamonds or glass towers. It lives in the simple act of showing up, of holding each other through the storms, and cherishing the second chances life dares to give. And so I ask you, do you believe everyone deserves a second chance at love? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the stories yet to come, tales of love, of redemption, and of finding home again. Because who knows, the next story might be the very one you've been waiting for.